Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball. I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, breaking down last night's New Orleans Pelicans victory over the San Antonio Spurs, 114-96. There's really a tale of two halves in this one. The Pelicans couldn't get anything going in the first half. They turned the ball over a ton, and really the shooters just were not shooting, leading to only 40 points at the break. Now, in the second half, that was much of a different story. The Pelicans put up 74 points in the second half, holding the Spurs to just 43 points. A lot of this had to do with the Pelicans going big, with going again with another lineup of multiple bigs in the front court. This time it paid off. The Pelicans had 69 rebounds, was good for third most in franchise history. They won on the boards by a margin of 23, which again, this has been a problem for the Pelicans all season long. And so Willie Green and the coaching staff have opted to go to a bigger lineup that has yielded mixed results, but it's something that I look to see more of as the season goes on. They also dominated the paint with 58 points in the paint to the Spurs only 34. This is an area the Pelicans should be strong in every single game because they have one of the best paint scorers of all times on their team in Zion Williamson, and the more big lineups they play, the more they'll be able to score at the rim. The Pelicans' bigs really stood out tonight, each in their own facet. Kelly Olynyk was great with the ball, without the ball, on both ends of the floors with 14 points and 15 rebounds in just his second game as a Pelican. Yves Missi struggled a little bit on the offensive end versus Bismack Biyombo with only 6 points. But he had a career-high 15 rebounds and really capitalized over the Spurs going small. And Carlo Mavic with a career-high 19 points, 6 rebounds, really was all over the place. Showed a little bit of all of his games with both a block, three, and multiple finishes at the rim. The two big lineup for the Pelicans is going to afford them a ton of versatility. Yves Missi and Kelly Olynyk are an athletic and a skill-based lineup that the Pelicans deploy, where at all times you have two almost 7-footers on the floor, but they can play off each other in ways that a normal four would. Kelly Olynyk and Carlo Mavic, when you deploys those two together, you have two skilled bigs who read the floor extremely well. And Carlo has some not so sneaky athleticism that he tends to dish out every now and then. Now, when you put that athleticism of Carlo on the floor with Yves as well, that's two athletes who can put pressure on the boards and that can switch on the guards and not leave you in a vulnerable state on the defensive mind. That type of versatility paired with a Trey Murphy, who's 6'8", 6'9" himself, and a Herb Jones once he returns, and a Zion Williamson who may be the shortest player on the court at that particular time, that should give the Pelicans a lot more options to go to, both as they finish out this season and into next year. Now, Kelly Olynyk, again, is someone we talked about in previous podcast, but is really the idea of him has always been interesting to the Pelicans front office for years and years to come. Last night obviously was a phenomenal night for him, but he makes all the small plays that the Pelicans have been missing as well. There were several times throughout the game where there was just veteran savvy plays that he would make, whether that was with the ball, whether that was without the ball, to set screens and to get other teammates open. He also had a foul on Bismack Biyombo where he forced him to go to the free throw line instead of getting an easy dunk. Those are just plays that the Pelicans have missed all season long, right? And so adding Kelly Olynyk to this group of young players can only help as Zion and Trey Murphy try to excel in their stardom, but as the role players trying to settle in as well as young players in this league. His impact in the half court continues to show. His continuity and his ability to be a connector is something that the Pelicans have desperately missed for years and years. The Pelicans have been notorious for stopping the ball in the half court and just holding and dribbling for time and time again. Well, Kelly Olynyk's on the court. He's like a point guard at the power forward or center position and constantly is forcing the Pelicans to move the ball. And that is something that it's got to be good for a young team that's learning how to play off one another. He also was able to find players in spots where they could take advantage of. He found a Zion on a nice lob to the rim that, again, you've been hoping for the Pelicans to make that play all season long. And Kelly Olynyk comes in game 2 and makes that play. And Zion talks about how playing off of him, and even when he's not ready for it, Kelly Olynyk forces him to be the best version of himself because of how he sees the floor. Not only that, but the floor spacing that he offers. Now, he only made 1 3 in this game, but it just gives so much more space and room for Zion to operate so that he can find his shooters. Now, when we talk about Zion and we talk about what he was able to do, I guess he had a bad game last night. Only 22 points, only 47% from the field, only 60% from the free throw line, only 9 rebounds, only 2 blocks, and only 2 steals. These are bad games for Zion Williamson, where he's not over the 50, the 60% marks from the field, but still, he's finding ways to impact the game, even when his shot's not going down at the same rate as he normally makes, or even the free throws are not going down at the same clip that he's accustomed to or growing to build. He's still finding ways to impact the game. And now the Pelicans are leaning into these bigger lineups, which is allowing him to play more like a guard, which is what he's always considered himself to be. The Zion 2 shoe came out, and he talks about how it was emphasizing his point guard ability. In today's NBA, point guards and shooting guards are around 6'5", 6'6", which is what Zion is altogether. And so as you see the remainder of this schedule plays out, you'll see, and no DeJounte Murray returning this season, you should see more and more Zion guarding guards and playing more in the backcourt than in the front court. And Willie Green has talked about it and made an emphasis to call out that he is the point guard on the floor now. And I think this suits him, and this is something Zion's been looking for his entire time. David Griffin has talked about Zion loves point Zion, and now you're forced to get more of it. It'll be interesting to see what this looks like the remainder of the season. But so far, it has yielded nothing but great results. Zion is a great passer, and he's a great decision maker. So surrounding him with shooters and people who can be threats at the rim is only going to be good for the Pelicans as they can consistently grow and continue to grow moving forward this season. Zion also changed the game in this when he got into a little back and forth with De'Aaron Fox, and you could see him rev it up a little bit more on the defensive end. But also, you're starting to see that mean streak from Zion pop out a little bit more throughout the games. He's been known as being a super, super charismatic guy off the floor, but you're starting to see a little bit more attitude, a little bit more pop come from him, a little bit more trash talk come from him during the games. And this is something that I know that the New Orleans fans base is desperately looking for, and I see the team responding to it as well. His defensive end and his defensive abilities are growing each more down the game. He talks himself about the ability to guard 1 through 5, and he's shown it so far this year. He's matched up versus Jokic at time, Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Domantas Sabonis, Scotty Barnes, all these players that have different skill set, but Zion's been able to hold his own. This is an area that is huge for the Pelicans, and because he can be not just an average defender, but an impact defender for this team moving forward. Now, something that wasn't so big of a bright spot was the Pelicans' struggles yet again shooting the ball. The shooters have to get going. At one point in this game, the Spurs led by 17 points, mostly because the Pelicans just couldn't hit wide open shots. They ended the game with only 27 assists total, but really it was a rock fight from both teams. The Spurs only hit 15 of 51 threes, and the Pelicans, again, just 11 for 33. The league average in three-point attempts per game is 37. Willie Green has talked about putting up 40 per game. Now, a lot of this comes from paint penetration and kicking out, and so far this season, only Zion and a little bit of Trey Murphy has been consistent about getting the rim and to forcing the defense to collapse or to double teams. The shooters in this one, meaning Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Jordan Hawkins, really struggled. They were just 13 of 36 from the field and just 7 for 22 from the three-point line. The offenses tend to get stagnant when Zion sits down. Trey Murphy's scoring efficiency is something to keep an eye on as his role and his position on this team continues to grow. It's taken a bit of a dip in the month of February from the month of January, just in terms of his efficiency. But in terms of balancing that efficiency, that's part of learning how to be a main option. And this is something I expect Trey Murphy to get better at the more opportunities that he gets. Now, there's something that you want to take note of is how does he continue to impact the game in other ways? And he's been able to do that both on the boards, on the defensive end, and with his playmaking. While his shooting percentages haven't been what he wants them to be or in the month of February, he's still contributing in other areas, and that's what you want to see from a young player. Now, someone who hasn't quite settled in since joining the Pelicans would be Bruce Brown. Now, it's only 4 games, and he's only been playing about 20 minutes per game, but he's not having the best impact so far. Only 4 points, only 3 rebounds, hasn't hit a three, only 1 total steal. He's shooting 25% from the field so far and really not generating the results the Pelicans were hoping when they initially made this trade. Now, he's on the last year of his contract, and it'll be interesting to see after David Griffin's comments about keeping him around long term, if he can turn things around and get into some rhythm on this new team the last 25 games or so of the season. Now, that being said, Brandon Boston is someone who, when he returns to the lineup, might be someone who takes Bruce Brown's minutes. David Griffin has talked about Brandon Boston's or BJ Boston's on-ball defense and what he can be able to bring. That's something that Bruce Brown is supposed to bring to this roster as a point of attack defender, but hasn't quite had that impact quite yet. Now, if Brandon Boston's able to do that on the defensive end while also being able to generate his own shot and looks for others, that may help the Pelicans from getting stagnant when Zion or Trey Murphy is not on the court. And not only that, when his contract situation gets sorted out, I expect him to be a big part of this rotation moving forward. Now, another big part of this rotation and someone else who's been generating looks for someone else is Jose Alvarado. Now, stop me when you've heard this again. Jose Alvarado's energy coming into the game changed the game yet again. It's not just the stats. It's not just the box score. He had a career-high 9 rebounds and 8 assists and 12 points and a positive plus-minus of 12. But it's not just that. It's his ability to impact the game and to impact his others and bring other teammates to rise to the occasion and the energy level that he brings night in and night out. He's also having a career year across the board. Most points he's ever scored per game, most minutes he's ever played, most assists per game. He's shooting a career high 40% from the three-point line on 5 attempts. So yes, he can shoot, but it's not just that. There's so many other ways that Jose Alvarado has impacted the game and continues to impact the game, and he showed that in last night. Now, again, Jose Alvarado got to match up against his arch nemesis, Chris Paul, and that never lets out for entertainment. Those two were going at it late into the game, and ultimately, I think that's what sprung the Pelicans into bringing more energy and more transition in the second half. Now, we can't not end this pod without talking about the Pelicans' young rookie, Carlo Mavic. He yet again had a career night, 19 points, 8 of 9 from the field. He hit a 3, was perfect from the free throw line, but his energy and his ability to read the floor really stood out. He talked about playing the 4 is a little bit new for him and playing with another big is a little bit new for him, but I think it's one of those things where his athleticism allows him the ability to be interchangeable at that 4 or 5 position. The only things holding Carlo Mavic back is confidence and experience and opportunities. The more and more he plays, the more confident he's playing, the more you're seeing him be in rhythm, and he offers something unique for the Pelicans at the 4 or 5 position. He has both the combination of shooting and athleticism that Kelly Olynyk doesn't quite have. He's not the best athlete. Yves Missi is not so great at shooting the ball and still learning on the offensive end, whereas Carlo Mavic has a lot of the combination of both of those things. So his growth and development next to a Kelly Olynyk, next to a Yves Missi is something to really pay attention to as the Pelicans wind down. So no, Zion did not play more than 28 minutes, but the Pelicans win big in this one. When the Pelicans get stops and they get out and run like they did in that second half, they're a super fun team to watch. Now, they'll be back in the Smoothie King Center versus Spurs yet again on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. But with all that being said, latest news, updates, and analysis, make sure you